So I'd like to call the annual reorganization meeting of the Pelham Union Free School District to order on July 12th, 2022. Thank you. If we can all rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance, please. So next on the agenda is the reiteration of executive session motions. Would somebody do that, please? Michael?
Hey.
I don't know if you wanted to do it since you got them.
That's okay. I don't have them with me, so.
I'll read the
Yeah,
executive session.
thank you.
motion. So the board met in executive session to discuss the employment history of a particular person and the record of a particular student.
Thank you. So next on the agenda is the fun part, is the oath of office for our three newly elected Board of Ed trustees. So I will come around, I will have you do the oath. You can stand up and face the flag, and then I'll have you sign the oath book as well. Okay? So we'll do an alphabetical order. So I'll first start with Jackie. I'll come to you. Press it out nice and large. So you can just face the flag.
I, Jackie DeAngelis, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of member of the Board of Education according to the best of my ability.
Thank you. And you'll I'll just have you sign. Thank you. Right here, please. Thank you, and congratulations. Thank you.
For the rest, can we either get this mic or directly in front of the microphone, please?
Okay. So Natalie? Yeah. You will come up here.
I, Natalie Marrero, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of member of the Board of Education according to the best of my abilities.
Thank you. And Will Treves.
I, Will Treves, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of member of the Board of Education according to the best of my ability.
Now we're on section 4.1. We're going to elect President of the Board of Education. So I'm going to call for a motion to nominate the President of the Board of Education for the 2022-23 school year. Do I have a motion?
So moved. I would like to nominate Michael Owen Machine for this year's president.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Natalie?
Second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed, any abstentions? No? Michael, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Michael, you get to come up here.
Okay. I can handle that.
So I'll have you.
Okay. I, Michael Owen Mashane, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of President of the Board of Education according to the best of my ability. Okay. Do you all want to take a? I promised my kids a picture, so I'm just gonna do that real fast. Okay. Whoops. Okay, there we go. Thank you. Okay. All right, thank you, everyone. And thank you for the little picture break. The next item is 4.2, election of Vice President of the Board of Education. Do I have a motion, or I will make a motion to nominate Ian Rowe to be Vice President. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay.
So I don't know, I have a piece of paper for Ian.
Can we read it to you and then you repeat it, Ian?
Yes. Why don't we try that?
Email it to him? What's that?
Hold it in front of the computer right there. You'll be able to read it.
It's okay, he can repeat after me. I, Ian Rowe, do solemnly swear
I, Ian Rowe, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and I will faithfully discharge
the duties of Vice President
the duties as Vice President
of the Board of Education
of the Board of Education
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Thank you. I'll have you sign the book when I see you next.
Okay. Item 5.1 is a motion to appoint the district clerk, the deputy district clerk, the treasurer, and the deputy district treasurer. And our district clerk would be Pauline Davies, the deputy district clerk, Alex Wolf, treasurer, Jacqueline Vigil, and deputy district treasurer would be the executive director of HR and leadership, so Dr. Garcia. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
And we take a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or any abstentions? No. So,
I do the oath to you. I do the oath as well.
you do the oath.
I know it's not
This one's for Cheryl.
Hmm?
This one's for Cheryl. It's the oath to the
This
superintendent.
is the last one.
Okay, so
I do
This
my
is
oath.
Cheryl.
Yeah,
you
I
do your oath?
Yes. yeah.
Okay.
So I, Pauline Davies, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and I will faithfully discharge the duties of District Clerk of the Pelham Union Free School District according to the best of my ability.
And you'll do the oath for everyone else within the next 30 days? Okay. All right. So 5.2 is administration of oath to the superintendent. Do we vote on this?
So it's my turn.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so Pauline, do I just read the oath?
Yes, yep.
Okay. I, Cheryl Champ, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of Superintendent of Schools of the Pelham Union Free School District according to the best of my ability.
Okay, Michael, it's all yours now.
Okay, all right, so section 6. Now, is this the point where we should move up?
No, you're still in the reorg, so
still,
go through 6.
still do this,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Sure.
All right, so section 6, board action and discussion items. I could do a consent for 6.1 through 6.5. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
So moved. A second.
Okay.
Any questions or comments?
Any questions? Comments?
Jim, these are all things that we approve at the reorg every year, correct?
That's correct. Again, bonding, purchasing, and payroll designations, personnel designations. Again, those annual appointments that we have to make.
And this goes through, sorry, 6.5, right?
Yes. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Section 6.6 is to appoint the school attorney. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second.
Okay. Any comments or questions about this? I reviewed the board policy, and we do have the opportunity to periodically review and even do a request for proposals. But I think at this time, we could move forward with Keenan Bean and maybe look into doing that in the future.
Absolutely, if that's something the board wanted to do, what we would do is I would find a draft scope of services, share that with the board. At that point in time, the board can put that out for a public RFP, request for proposal, evaluate those responses, and then based on those responses, the board could make an award based on a qualitative decision-making.
We did the same, I can't remember exactly how many years ago, but with our external auditors as well, too. We had an RFP process, the audit, it went through audit committee. They made a recommendation that we then adopted.
Jim, what does that transition process look like? So we would retain Keenan Bean, the board would have a discussion about whether or not we wanted another direction, and then if we wanted to put out an RFP, there'd be a motion
So we
for the
don't
RFP?
we don't need a motion to put out an RFP.
Okay.
What we could do is, again, based on the board discussion,
Okay.
my office would then put that out.
Okay,
When we receive those responses, the business office would collect those responses, because this is really your attorney, this is the board's attorney. You would probably want to interview those respondent firms. And again, when you put out that RFP, you'll have some criteria upon which you will evaluate your responses. And then based on those responses and the evaluative criteria, the board can make a recommendation for an appointment. Or again, depending on whatever direction the board chose to go.
But the retainer
described here? When does that begin? That begins sort of now?
So
effectively?
that's an annual retainer, as I understand it. It's paid monthly.
Oh, it's
and
monthly,
It is
so-
monthly. I believe there's also a termination to it. As I believe that's what I heard, so I think it's in the retainer documentation.
Yeah, that's correct, Jim. Towards the end, it does have that clause built in there. But this is our typical annual retainer contract.
And Dr. Champ and Mr. Ricky, sorry for all the questions, but we've had changes in other providers, but not with our legal team since I've been on the board. So what, if we were to put out an RFP and choose another firm, what does the transition look like? Because, our legal team works on policies and procedures and different cases that we litigate. Have you ever worked for districts where there's been a
In my
transition?
experience, not with a change in an attorney, but I've been in places where that's happened with accountants, and there's certain professional standards that an industry like accountants need to follow to make sure that the information from one client is transferred to another client in an appropriate manner. I would think that was probably would happen in a much similar manner with attorneys.
I would probably say the same as Jim. I haven't been through a transition. I know Keenan Bean, I think, has been with the district for 18 years or so. So there hasn't been a transition in recent knowledge. I don't think, Steve's our institutional knowledge, but I know he would not have either gone through this transition. So as Jim said, I'm sure there would be professional standards that would facilitate any change should that be made after the RFP process.
Yeah, so we could do the RFP, see who responds, compare on cost with weighing, the cost of having a transition and going through that, just to make sure that we're getting the best legal advice, especially if it's been 18 years, see what other options there are.
Is that, I just curious, is that the consensus of the board? Just so that Jim has some clear direction for his office to put that together, if that is, in fact, the
I'd agree
consensus
with
of the
that.
board.
Yes, I agree.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're just putting out for an RFP, right?
right.
Yes, doesn't obligate the board to anything
Exactly.
other than requests for proposals.
Correct.
Yeah, so we would, we're covered, we have legal counsel with this agreement. There is an exit option if we choose to do that, but we could, interview other firms. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. I think we could do 6.7 through 6.15 as a consent agenda. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
So moved.
Second, for Ian? Any comments or questions? We'd be setting our next board meeting date to August 24th.
Correct.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? No. So the next section is 7, approval of committee on special education. I'll do 7.1 through 7.7 as a consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second?
Thank you. So this is appointing different people to the special education committees. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we're done.
If only.
Oh. Okay, so take a motion to adjourn the annual reorganization meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? All right. So now call to order the business meeting. So I would like to call to order the business meeting of July 12th, 2022. Do I need a motion for that?
No.
Okay. 9.2 is President's opening remarks. Well, first, I'd just like to thank Jessica DiDomenico, Sue Childs for your service and leadership, and welcome Will Treves and Jackie DeAngelis and Natalie Marrero to the board, and thank Ian Rowe for serving as Vice President. I want to welcome Dr. Bowman. Really looking forward to supporting you over the next few years. I wish a very restful and relaxing summer to all of our teachers who are on vacation, and especially thank our teachers who are working this summer to help our students. Thank all of our administrators and building staff that are working hard this summer. I know we've got an audit coming up in the business office, and Happy New Year for our fiscal new year, right?
Stole my line.
So the board will be planning a retreat soon and setting our goals and sort of vision for the coming year. So we've got our work cut out for us. Really looking forward to working closely with Dr. Champ and the whole administrative team. Okay. So 10 is it?
Can we make a motion to move up the
Oh,
item?
yes, yes.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Sorry.
All right, so
I
can
don't
I
wanna
have?
keep Dr. Bowman and her husband here all night.
Yeah.
I think it's 16.1.
Okay, can I have a motion to move up item 16.1, the appointment of the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning?
So moved. Second.
And Will has second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? No. Okay, so,
And then you can take a motion, that motion itself.
all right, so on
very good.
16.1, motion to approve the appointment of Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Congratulations.
Want to say something? You wanna go?
Yeah, and I believe Dr. Bowman has some comments to share. I'm sorry that I can't be there to welcome her in person, but I know that everyone saw the announcement that went out today. I'm very excited that she's going to be joining the team. We're very much looking forward to her start on August 8th. I know Dr. Garcia, probably more than anyone, is looking forward to her start. He's getting ready to pass the torch, but also is ready to be just an outstanding partner and to help her carry forward the work that he's planted such a great foundation on. So without any further ado, I'll turn it over to Dr. Bowman to give some comments, because I know she and her husband have some exciting plans for the rest of the season.
Well, thank you. First, I want to thank everybody. It is truly an honor to join the Pelham School District community. Already, I see that the many opportunities the Pelham students are afforded and the excellence in education that Pelham students are provided are only a part of what makes Pelham a very special and unique community. Pelham is clearly a place that champions its children, knows the power of community, and works tirelessly to ensure that the education provided by Pelham schools is world-class. As your newly appointed Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, I am honored and humbled to join the team, and I pledge to always provide the best I have to offer in service to the district, to the community, and most importantly, to our children. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Congratulations.
You can go if you want.
Enjoy the night.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
See you next month.
Okay. Okay, so now we're back to 10, approval of minutes. So I'll do 10.1 and 10.2 as a consent agenda to approve the minutes from the past two meetings. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. 11 is administrative and committee reports. So we'll start with 11.1 superintendent's report.
So thank you so much.
Whoops,
Uh-oh,
you went on
broke
mute.
up.
think you hit mute.
As the board knows, sorry about that, Dr. Bowman really was the main part of my report. So first off, I'm sorry that I can't be there tonight to welcome you all in person, but as is the case these days, COVID is still out there. So it finally struck me after 2.5 years of avoiding it. So thankfully, it's been very mild, but I'm sorry I can't be with you tonight, but congratulations to all the new board members who have joined. We're really pleased to have you. I look forward to working with each of you. To Michael and to Ian, your new leadership roles as well. Congratulations on that. And look forward to Dr. Bowman joining us. She really brings a wealth of experience that I think is going to help us to continue to push forward. She didn't say, I don't think when she met with the board before, I'll say it for her. She's a self-professed data geek, and she's an English teacher. So it's rare to find that blend, which I think is part of why she's going to be so phenomenal for us. So we're very much looking forward to her starting on August 8th. We've got a long to-do list that we're putting together, but I know Alice, and I've worked with her in the past, and I know she's going to dive in immediately, roll her sleeves up, and get right to work. So I'm confident we're going to be in great shape for the start of school. Since I was on vacation last week, hence the COVID, there's really nothing more for me to report since I was at our last meeting here. So I know it's a long agenda for tonight, so I'm going to end my report there, but look forward to really resuming a much more robust report once we come back in August, and look forward to the start of the retreat that was mentioned. Look forward to our goal setting, our team building opportunities, and really excited to use the summer first to rest, relax, but then to rejuvenate as we prepare and gear up for the exciting year ahead. So thank you all, and I'll turn the meeting back over to Michael.
Okay. Yeah, I know we all wish you a speedy recovery.
Thank you.
Next is Board of Education committee reports. Are there any committee reports? I don't have a committee report.
I don't believe we've had any committees since last time.
All right. 11.3 is the Assistant Superintendent's update on authentic learning.
So I'll step into that role for a second. As you know, we've been doing a lot of hiring over the past few months. And that's why I kind of just mentioned that we have 15 new people that we've hired since April. I think they're excellent teachers, and I'm very much looking forward to get them started. Teachers do come back on the 31st for August 31st for the Superintendent's Conference Day. But the day before, we do have an orientation. I'll be sending information about that to all the board members to welcome them and kind of get you introduced as well, for them to get acclimated to the system. So that's one of our first sessions with our new teachers. We have a few more positions which we are currently looking to fill, and we hope that we will conclude that obviously in August before the next school board meeting, which is August 24th. We have had some late resignations in the past, but I think we've always done well to find highly qualified candidates for those positions. So that's normal in the case of a school year, so I don't want anyone to kind of be surprised about it. We also have a number of leave replacements, which you will see throughout the school year, teachers who take leaves for various reasons, and we fill those positions as well. So that is part of the normal functioning of an organization. But I also just want to thank again the administrators who do most of the lifting in terms of the hiring process and making sure that our teachers are working in front of kids. We get to watch them in front of our children during the summer, teach, evaluate them, and hire the best people that which are out there. So we'll continue working on that this summer.
Thank you. I guess we will skip the whole child update and go next to 11.5 Assistant Superintendent's update on finance and facilities.
Hi, thank you, and good evening, and Happy New Year to everybody. In the world of school finance, July 1st is the new year for us, and we closed out the June 30th year. So it's a great time of the year, busy time of the year for us, certainly. But we're gonna get right through it, and the school year goes pretty quickly. It's something else. Obviously, welcome to the new board leadership and to the new members of the board. If I can be a resource during the year, please don't hesitate in reaching out to me, and certainly do that with members of the community as well. We've got a couple of things on the agenda tonight, and I'll just provide some updates on our 2018 capital bond. I was running around the district today, and it really looks like the scaffolding in front of the high school will eventually come down this summer. Speaking with our contractor, they're putting in about 4 to 5 stones per day. Now, that may not sound like a lot, but these are hundreds of pound stones that are being put back in the front of the school to really rehabilitate and replace that entire front of the building with new windows. So they've got a couple of weeks left, and I think it's really going to look fantastic and great for the students and residents of Pelham. The interior renovation work in the former administrative offices of a superintendent, assistant superintendent for curriculum and personnel, and the business offices are being converted back into instructional spaces. That work is progressing along nicely. That work was really delayed about two years as a result of the COVID and what the COVID, I sound like my father-in-law, excuse me. And really what happened with COVID and the inside work. And you say, we really have to think back about 2 years ago, and people really didn't want to have people working inside because we didn't know what was happening. That was really fortunate for us with Hutchinson School, because that work moved along very nicely, because a lot of that was outside work at the time. But right now, we're on to the next step, and we would like to get this final phase wrapped up at the high school, and it is moving along nicely, which is good to see. Prospect Hill, the addition, really is a really handsome partner to the existing building, I think, as you look at it. The slates have been delivered for the new roof, which was terrific. They had some trouble sourcing the right colors and right sizes, but now they tell us it's just right. Now we're waiting for the roofers to show up, and we're told it's about a 2-week installation once the roofers do that work. The elevator installer was there today, helping program the system, as well as the fire panel folks. So again, we're moving along nicely there, and there's some finished carpentry, but we expect to have that space available for the beginning of the school year. And again, to remind everybody, that's a security vestibule area. It's ADA accessibility, so that entire building will then be ADA accessible, which is really great. It's a classroom on the top floor, a conference room, and then there's a smaller office space, which would be in the front of the building on the 2nd floor. At Hutchinson School, some work is being done inside the building that we were not satisfied with the first time. As an example, the floor of the kitchen, not a place where a lot of people are going to see it, but we saw it, and we were not happy with the workmanship. The contractor's been working on trying to remedy it all year. They haven't remedied it to our satisfaction. We're still working through that. So there's some things that are happening as part of the punch list inside the building that are still going to happen this summer. But it shouldn't impact any of the program as it happens. Outside the building, if you go to Lincoln and 3rd, I think you'll see some real progress where the former building used to stand. There's a nice stone knee wall that's been constructed. Right now, we're working with the contractor on how that space will be finished. If you may or may not recall, this building has meets a LEED standard, but won't meet LEED certification, but it will meet all the standards for a LEED certification. And there's a cistern that's going to be installed for water collection right there. So that's some of the work that's being done on that site. The steps will be reconstructed. The former steps are being retained, and they'll be reconstructed because some of the former building landed on those stairs. And then at the top, the new field needs to be constructed and a playground installed, and an employee's parking lot constructed. So we've met twice with the site work contractor over the last 3 weeks. They know what our expectations are. Certainly the most immediate expectations are the field and the playground use for our students. And he said he shared with us as recently as today that he's going to be able to meet those requirements. This evening, item 14.51, there's a change order request for Hutchinson School. It has to do with the retaining wall. At this point, I would really ask the board to hold that item. We're slow in getting backup from the construction manager and architect, and quite honestly, I don't think I have enough information to share with the board for you to make that decision. So I'd like to have that item held until we get more follow-up information from our architect and from our construction manager. Our external auditors started last month on their work for our end-of-year audit. Yesterday, the team came on site. So yesterday, we had 2 auditors. Today, I believe we had 5 auditors on site. They'll be here this week for their on-site work, and they will be completing their work off-site. We should have end-of-year results for the August meeting to share with the board at that point in time. I shared with the board, there was a new audit pronouncement, just a regulatory item that I had shared with the entire board as a disclosure point of information as part of my update memo to the board. So again, normally it would be shared with the audit committee. At this point in time, we're in a transitional time. Certainly the board would certainly have all of that information. On tonight's agenda, there's an item for the district-wide school safety plan. This is something that is required by state legislation. It's a district-wide safety plan, which is a public-facing document, which needs to be approved by the school board every year after a 30-day waiting period. So there's a public hearing tonight. We put that district-wide safety plan, we make it available to the public. It'll be on the website, it'll be at the business office. People can access it for comment if they have any comments. At the meeting in August, before school starts, we'll ask the board to approve it. This district-wide safety plan was looked at over the last year by our safety and security consultants, Altiris. That was really part of their year 1 work with us in reviewing our district-wide safety plans, making any changes. As part of that work, they sat and met with staff, administrators, and reviewed our safety plans. In addition to our district-wide safety plans, which are a public-facing document, we have confidential building safety plans. Those are made available to our first responders, but since they have the details of what our reactions would be in certain emergencies, those items are not made public. That information in those building-wide safety plans are not made public. Again, our administrators, but public safety all have access to that information. This evening, you'll see we have a request for some budget transfers for the year-end close. As we look to year-end close, we're actually the first school district that the auditors do the year-end close for every year. So great work on our department, on the business office, and the timing and the weekend that people put in just this past week on making sure we have all of our invoices are in, our books were closed, and they're presentable, and our binders are all ready for our auditors. So this is a common transfer. It's common for us to have transfers every year, and this is one of those items that we have in place as we close out the year. I mentioned change orders. I mentioned external audit. I'm going through my list. I'm talking to myself a little bit here. Obviously, congratulations to Dr. Bowman. Steve's great, but it'll be nice to have another person too. I think he would probably.
2 new people.
I think Steve would probably say the same thing too. And then certainly we are in the process of turning our buildings around so that we're ready for September. And that process involves a lot of hard work from our facilities department. Just to give an example, what we will do is, well, I won't do it, but our facilities department will do it, is they will take all the furniture out of a classroom. They'll clean all of that furniture. They'll strip our floors. They'll clean those floors, refinish them if needed. If a room needs additional attention with painting, it could get that type of attention. And then we do that on all of our classrooms throughout the entire district. I've got a great workforce of student seasonal workers. They show up for work at 6 in the morning and they go home really tired, and our parents really seem to enjoy it. And we really enjoy them too. They're great workers. They learn a little bit more about our school, and it seems to be a really nice arrangement for the district because we're getting a lot of work done, and we're happy to have that too. There's an appointment for 2 additional student workers on the board agenda for tonight. Some kids go on vacation, and then we take kids off of our waiting list, and that's kind of where we're asking you to appoint a few more folks tonight. And then, as we go through the summer and before the school year begins, every year there's an annual walkthrough of the board of the schools before the schools begin. And we'll work with the superintendent and board leadership on getting a date so that everyone's able to make that. And hopefully, again, we want you to like what you see when you walk through the schools after the summer and making sure the schools are ready for the beginning of year for our students. Thank you.
Yeah. And it's good to see the upgrades and all the work that went into the buildings over the summer.
Well, that's our opportunity to share with you all the great work of the folks that they're doing. Again, a lot of painting. It's gonna smell clean. It's gonna look clean, shiny, and that's our goal. And we're refurbishing a couple of classrooms too, and that's some of that work's being done in-house, and that's great. I mean, it's an opportunity for our folks to really do some nice work. And obviously, the final product is great for our students and staff.
Any comments or questions about?
Just that I saw the knee wall today and it looks fantastic.
It does.
It really helps me understand that corner a lot better.
How's the playing field, the grass at Prospect? Is that taken? Is that?
It's funny, so Mr. Condon, who's here tonight, he and I were at Prospect Hill today looking at it. There were some playing balls on the field, so obviously some kids are getting an early taste of it. I think we're gonna have a really great use of that field, and I think it'll be ready for our rec and our school programs for the fall, for September. It looks great. It's just we're finding the right balance between how much water to give it and not give it, yeah.
Great.
But I mean, we've got irrigation on that field, so this should really help us maintain the field and keep it in a stronger playable position longer. We're gonna have some fence work done over there too, so not on the field, but on the backstops and things like that. We're gonna freshen that up, so that'll be some additional work you'll see in those areas, probably over the summer.
Thank you.
Okay. So I think that brings us to our public hearings. So I'll take a motion to recess the public meeting so that we can then move on to discussing the draft district safety plan. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so next, a motion, 12.2, motion to convene a public hearing on the draft district safety plan. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So as we just heard, this is the district safety plan. That'll be posted for 30 days.
Yes.
And then we'll discuss it in another meeting in August.
Correct. And we'd ask you to approve it in August. And as you look at it, I'll try not to talk too much, but as Dr. Pullman was appointed this evening, she'll be added to this district-wide safety
To
plan.
update those.
As the board breaks down what committees members will rest on, there's a spot there for a board member that sits on the safety committee. Then will populate that area. So we have a police chief who's retiring in 3 days. At a point in time when the new police chief takes over, we'll make sure that information is there, and the interim chief is there too.
We can, 12.3 is communications and comments from the public, I guess, about the district safety plan. Does anybody else have anything to say about the district safety plan?
To the public-facing plan, which this is, were there significant updates from last year?
There were tweaks with Altiris, and Altiris is you may hear me say Altiris, they're a school safety and security firm. They work extensively in this area, in Long Island, and also upstate New York, and actually some schools in Louisiana. So this is really their specialty. And what they did is they're constantly reviewing this. So one of the things we looked at, I believe there's a cyber annex now, because they're hearing that there may be some additional requirements coming from the state that are not quite there, but these are the types of things that we're trying to forecast and get them in there, so we've got it covered. But what they did, again, is they looked at what we had, which wasn't, there were changes, but not significant changes, and that's probably because they came in, I think, 2012 or 2015 and helped us with our initial safety audit and safety plan. Really, that work during the last year was obviously with our district-wide safety plan, but then also trying to work on, at the building level, working with our building emergency response teams, and then our work moving forward is about doing what we did last year and then building capacity and growing a training plan so that it's better and stronger every year.
And this plan is reviewed and potentially amended and updated every 12 months?
By
So-
law, it has to be reviewed and amended, reviewed and approved by the board every year. And there's always been slight amendments to it.
I'm just reading through it in light of some of the safety discussions that we had this year, and it stands as a great document for parents in the community to read, because there's a wealth of information here, and a lot of the items we've discussed and concerns which have come up from parents, just to know that it's this comprehensive. I know it's required by law, but I think it might make some parents more more comfortable knowing that we have this kind of detail.
And for parents, members of the community who do want to read it, it'll be on the district site?
District webpage, yes. We'll work with Mr. Wolf so that it's visible for anybody who wants to look at it. We'll have it available in a print form at the business office too. And I would imagine any office, if you went to it, we're gonna help anybody who comes in the door and get them the information they're looking for.
Got it. And for people who have questions or concerns, they should be directed to
They can
you?
contact my office.
Okay.
Yes, the business office, superintendent's office, they know how to find me.
And Jim, were there any changes made specifically related to the events back in, October 31st at the high school?
So this doesn't necessarily speak specifically to that. I know there were changes and there were some obviously there was discussion about what happened in October, November timeframe. This doesn't give you the step-by-step with something like that. But again, this is kind of more of an all-encompassing safety plan for the district to follow. And then at a building level, there'd be more specific detail. In addition to that, I mean, in response to that too, I think there was some threat assessment training that took place for our administrators later in the year after that time period to help address some of those items that happened in the October, November timeframe.
Okay.
Is training required?
So there's certain levels of annual trainings that have to be completed. There's certain employee trainings, whether it's sexual harassment training, right to know, safety training, and that's part of our beginning of year plan with when folks come in. And then the other part is working with Altiris to try to build capacity on a regular training program, so that we're always trying to build on what we've done before. So in the last year, we had some great training. We did AED, in addition to some of that mandatory training, we did AED training. There was some Narcan training. There was, I believe, restraint training that happened for some of our staff, just to give an example of some of those things. This year, we're kind of looking at those same things. AED, if you have an EpiPen training, that's another one of those things where you would have that every year. And then we have our regular drills that we have to have every year. So the state requires that we have a certain amount of evacuation drills every year, a certain amount of lockdown drills, and it's making sure that we hold to that every year as part of the training.
I just wanted to add in there as well that building principals go over safety drills with their faculty and staff, of course, each year. As part of preparing and conducting those drills. But also, Dr. Garcia's office issues out every year a series of required training modules, online training modules, and as Jim said, a variety of required areas, and safety drills is one of those. So all staff are required to go through that training module on an annual basis, and that aligns with this plan that you see here today.
I know I had asked before about if Alteris would do like a safety audit, but I guess I'm understanding they kind of did that, and the result is the district safety plan. Is that?
That would be accurate. Really, that was the basis of their review of our safety plan this year, but also the review of their work with us this year. And I think we had a good discussion with I had a good discussion with Tiris as the year ended, kind of what worked, what we thought worked well, and where we wanted to see some changes or we want to do more. And I think one of those strong changes was the person-to-person contact with our administrators and our building emergency response teams. And then, again, that's building upon that. So now we've got it with our administrators, our building emergency response teams. Now let's push it out to more folks. And again, it's about building our capacity for everybody.
Mhm.
I know that Dr. Champ mentioned the annual mandatory trainings that the teachers, all staff members have to go through. And those are the videos. I mean, some of them are kind of dry, but these are the ones which we have done for a number of years, but I'll just read you the list of them. So the modules include child abuse, sexual harassment, Dignity for All Students Act / Code of Conduct in New York, prevention and emergency response in K-12 schools, and that is created by Alteris, mental health awareness, suicide prevention, hazard communications, which is the right to know if there's spilling of different chemicals, bloodborne pathogens, and the last one we did was student data privacy, which was part of New York State Education Law 2D for data privacy. So those are the annual ones that we're supposed to provide for teachers and all staff members every year. That does change over time. When I first started in this role, I think there were 4 modules, so it has increased. And they're also reviewed and they're updated. So if there's a change in state law or federal regulations, these modules are usually updated as well. If we find a better way to do it, we try to always look for a better way. Some of it's kind of dry, obviously, but we don't have a choice, and it's something which is important that all staff members understand all these modules and their mandatory compliance information. That is important that they understand. If they have any questions, they come to see my office. Sometimes they speak with Jim, but it is something that is online. They have a special account. I can see who's done it and who hasn't done it. Then we send gentle reminders. And there used to be certificates they used to print up, but we don't really do that anymore since I actually can see it online. I just wanted to make sure the board understood those different compliance.
Does that happen during the superintendent conference days, or that's?
No,
at
I mean, I
people's
use,
own
well,
pace?
some of them, for some staff members, they do. I know
Yeah.
a lot of the facility staff, monitors, there's time taken out during those days to do it. It's tricky, right, because sometimes people are like, well, how come I'm doing this during my time, but I don't want to do this at home. That's part of your mandated requirement by New York State as an employee in this type of job, so you have to do it. And sometimes we provide some time during the superintendent's conference day, but other times it's really things that they need to do on their own. It's part of their professional growth, and it's an obligation on their part. I have had questions though in the past, like how come I'm doing this, and I want to do this during my, when I'm in the office. That's not when you should be doing. But any issues we deal that come about, we talk to those employees.
Do we get a lot of questions from the community about the safety plan? Either directly to you or through Dr. Champ or to the board?
No, generally we have not. I mean, we do have community members who volunteer and participate on our safety plan, so that helps too. And certainly when people have questions, we invite them to join.
Yeah, we usually see an uptick in questions following any kind of school shooting in violence. I mean, that's natural. So we, of course, address those. And that's where having that regular safety committee that Jim chairs is helpful, because especially now with Alteris and even before with our local law enforcement, they always would get the professional, information through their listservs of the unfortunate lessons learned. But it always gives us a good venue to relook at our practices and see is there anything that was learned from a Uvalde, from some of these other events that we can use to tweak and improve our safety strategies. So not a lot of questions, but when people's concern is raised, then we're right there with them to talk that through.
Thank you.
And the safety committee is a district committee that has community members.
Yes, so it's made up of staff, board members, and community members.
They're listed
And
in the safety plan.
local law enforcement or public safety. It's, I don't want to just say law enforcement, it's police and fire.
They're listed in the safety plan too, I think.
They are, yes.
But that would be for, if people have a particular interest, that would be a great opportunity for them to
Yeah,
volunteer to be
to
on the
engage.
safety committee.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Any other comments or questions about that? So I'll take a motion to close the public hearing on the draft district safety plan.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So we will move on to the public hearing on the draft district code of conduct. So do I have a motion to convene a public hearing on the draft district code of conduct?
So moved.
And second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So,
Right. I can just share a little bit about this, and I know I think it was Jackie had asked the question about how to, what areas were had been changed. Unfortunately, because we were working off of multiple documents, we were not able to produce what would be a typical red line version like we would with policies. So I apologize for that. What I'll do is I'll just highlight some of the various topics or type items that were added. One other piece I'll add before I do that, though, is we have been, this is the first time that the code has been updated and probably since before COVID. We've been doing a tremendous amount of policy work under various board trustees who had chaired that committee. So we've done a lot of great policy work. But because of how large of a document this is, we knew that there were different aspects of it that needed to just get a timely look to make sure that they were still up to date with policy changes. So that was really the bulk of what we were looking at. Also, as many of you may know, the district belongs to a policy service. It's out of Erie 1 BOCES, and the policy service sends us monthly updates, kind of just updates of what's going on in the policy world, and they often will send us sample policies. They'll identify for us if things are required, if they're recommended, if they're optional. They'll do periodic audits of our policy catalog to help us know how to prioritize our work. So we have been working on policies for all that time, but we hadn't really had the time to get back and work on the code as a policy committee. So what we did is a large group of the administrators, we dedicated about half a day right after school ended to sitting around and jigsawing, taking a real critical look at the code of conduct itself. We also were able to get from the policy service a clean template code of conduct that's the most up-to-date that they have. So we did comparison between the current code, the updated template, and then also people looked with a critical eye towards policy updates. And we brought all of that into the existing document to make sure that it was as up-to-date as possible and in alignment with the policies we'd reviewed. So the main things that really were addressed in there was a variety of different things. Some of it was just basic language, basic introductory language, but things like responsibilities to protect personally identifiable information. That was in a variety of places. Again, aligning with new policies, whether it was the sexual harassment policies, harassment in general, a lot of addition of cyberbullying references, things like that. We also had the chance to reflect on areas that maybe we'd encountered over the last couple of years that maybe weren't as clear in there as could be. So we added in some statements regarding off-campus conduct. That's an area that has just grown exponentially, and we'll blame it on technology. But as technology has grown, that has blurred the lines between on-school and off-school conduct. So we always have to look for a nexus. If there's a nexus, a connection from what happens off campus to on campus, where does our responsibility and authority lie? So we added some language having to do with off-campus conduct so that students are appropriately notified. We also added in just a statement that Julianne's Playground and Glover Complex are school district property. And that the code of conduct applies on those properties, because we had numerous situations where arguably someone could have said they didn't realize it was school property. So we wanted to make that clearly laid out in the code. We found some simple things like detention wasn't listed or defined in the code of conduct, and that's something we do. So we wanted to add that. We had to update the DASA coordinators, similar to the safety plan, where you have to update names as personnel change. So there's updates to the DASA coordinators. Wanted to make sure that some of the more typical infractions that we encounter are also clearly listed in there. And then with the dress code, just added one small piece of no bare midriffs across the board. There's pretty general language in there, but that was one area that the administrators felt would benefit from more specificity. So separate and aside from this, I think it's worthy of note, the administrators, building administrators in particular, also have spent they spent a day earlier back in the spring working with Ron Longo, who's the hearing officer we've been using for the last couple of years, who does hearings, superintendent's hearings in a variety of districts, just to talk with him about what he's seen regionally about typical infractions and related consequences, to get a sense of kind of what the regional standard is from his experience. So they had that initial conversation, and then also in doing this work right after school ended, they worked to construct kind of a grid spreadsheet, if you would. It doesn't go in the code of conduct, but it's something that will likely be going into the student handbook that lays out a little bit more clearly than what we've had in the past. This category of infractions would generally then receive this category or these types of consequences. Like a level 1 infraction, these types of consequences. Level 2, more serious consequences, and tried to lay that out a little bit more clearly so that we can be really clear with students and parents about expectations, and also then amongst ourselves, we can be very consistent. Certainly still being developmental in approach, understanding that students who have multiple infractions would then move things to a higher level. But I think it was great conversation, and I think it was I think they've constructed a really nice earbuds just died. They'll be very practical in working with students and families. Any questions on that?
I guess my question is, as I skim through this again, as you're talking, I see so many overlaps with so many of our policies. So
Yes.
was that a tricky process to try and ensure that the wording is consistent with some of our related policies?
Yeah, we did farm some of that out to different people.
Okay.
So, like Steve took a look at a lot of the harassment type ones because he's the harassment officer, and asked John Sabalos to look at anything related to technology. So we just wanted, even though it may not be, verbatim cut and paste, we wanted to at least make sure there was an alignment in the approach. So that all should be in order.
So sorry if I missed this. This will go back to policy committee next year, or TBD if it will go back to policy committee?
Well, this is similar to the safety plan. This is up for public hearing,
Yes.
and then we'll be asking the board to approve it at the next meeting based on any
But
feedback.
yes, and I know we need to approve it before the start of the school year, but
Correct.
after that, is there an expectation that the policy committee will revisit?
Um,
Or-
Not necessarily, but if there's a
Okay.
desire for the policy committee to look at it, absolutely, we could do that.
Great.
It
Was
doesn't
there-
necessarily have to go through policy committee.
Was there like a particular area that?
No, I just think it might be a good process because there have been changes made. So when the new committee is established next year, to have them do a cursory review of the policy overall. it seems like it
familiarity,
might be good to
that
have.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we could, that could, I know, and once we reconstitute our committees, generally, we'll sit down and kind of frame out the policies that we'd like to target for the year, so that probably would pair nicely with that. Maybe instead of having a couple of years lag on catching up, we can look ahead to see if we're gonna.
Yeah, I mean, it just
update
seems like there's
something.
been a big step forward, at least
Yeah.
for in the last few years, and that's great, but maybe then to wrap it up by having the policy committee review it, bless it, we can do the 3 readings again too, because it is summer, so
Yep.
there might be community input on it at that point.
Sure.
I think that's a good plan, but I do appreciate the process you guys took because we've been talking about code of conduct for the last 3 years on policy, and it always feels like this big beast that we have to tackle along with all these other policies, which we have to address, and changes to the laws. So thank you to you and the administrators for doing this
Completely agree.
and getting us in a good spot, but I agree that that would probably be a healthy process. Oh, your cat is
We got the
joining the
introduction to the
conversation.
cat, so.
This is Snowy. I think
So-
this is the sign that I've been in here too long. Just kidding.
I think you may have covered this in your introduction, but just to clarify, because there's a lot in this document. It's a big piece of work, and hats off to the people who worked on it. So is this a sort of consolidation of sort of disparate documents or rules or policies that have kind of coexisted, and it's just bringing it together into a more central document? In other words, is there new material in here, or is it a consolidation of existing material that has previously been?
It's a lot of it, to be honest, is very template, regulatorily required, based on state legislation that came out, I forget which year it was, that was like 2001, somewhere around there, that stipulated a lot of what needed to be in a code of conduct. So much of that really is regulatory. To your point, though, we do have, in large part, a lot of policies that also mirror different aspects of it. So yeah, it goes through a lot of different topics that we have related policies on. But it predominantly is a template form, honestly similar to the safety plan. Again, the state defines, certain expectations of what's covered in a code of conduct. And that's what we have to include in it. We can always customize to our district. We can always add to things. There's also a requirement that we provide families with a plain language version, which really is our student handbooks. They take what are kind of the core pieces in there related to discipline and attendance and things like that, and simplify it and shorten it usually to make it a little bit more approachable. But when it comes to disciplinary hearings, especially suspension, superintendent level hearings, the code of conduct is something that we have an obligation to make sure all students have been provided, they've been introduced to the expectations, because that's the document that they're actually held to with regard to things like suspensions, in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension. And even in there, whether it's, because it's not only student behavior, it really defines the behavior of all persons on a school campus. Things like sexual harassment, visitor behavior, et cetera. There's a variety of different expectations. So that's really the core document that legally we go back to, should there be any type of disciplinary infraction to deal with.
Thank you.
Kind of the interesting part of it to me, kind of to your question, what I learned over the past year in the policy committee, there's like state and federal laws like Title IX or DASA. Then we translate those into district policies. Then those policies, the ones that are relevant to like student behavior, they get put into the code of conduct. Then from the code of conduct, it goes into the student handbook.
Right.
So it's kind of like a flow. So a lot of it is sort of defined by the law.
Yeah.
And the other part of it is if there is like a superintendent's hearing about a disciplinary matter, it's sort of a quasi-judicial thing, and it comes back to the code of conduct. So it kind of has to stand up, you know, in a quasi-judicial setting.
To that point, when we pass it in August, we should make sure that the draft moniker is taken off of it, regardless of whether it's going back to policy committee. That should just be clear.
Yeah, I know Pauline's going to also be doing a lot of format work on it.
Yeah.
Again, we were working with files coming from different places, and we wanted to get the substance of it done for you, and we'll get the formatting into, you're correct, get the draft removed for the next meeting. And I would add, if folks have any comments or questions from the community, they're welcome to reach out to myself, email or call, and we'll address whatever those questions might be.
I have heard that the dress code is usually a hot button issue. So you said the only change was saying no bare midriffs,
Right,
kind of across the board.
correct. Yep, we want to be even in our application of such things.
Seems pretty reasonable. Any other comments or questions about that? And 12.6 is communications and comments from the public about the code of conduct. So 12.7, a motion to close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Okay, so 12.8 is a motion to reconvene in the public meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Right. 13 is communications and comments from the public. About anything. I think we just ask you to say your name and address.
Sure thing. My name is Dr. Bijal Amin Gupta. I live at 141 Harmon Avenue. I have 2 kids in the Pelham schools right now. Bianca just finished at Colonial in 5th grade, and Mila is starting 3rd grade. And I met some of you last time, and I just had some follow-up comments. As you may remember, my comments were related to our transportation policy. I'm just going to summarize a couple of things. There is a New York State policy that mandates transportation for out-of-district students. You can read the full policy. It's very easy to Google, but for K through 8, it's for kids who live 2 to 15 miles away from the school they legally attend, 9 to 12, 3 to 15 miles. As I said, there's more to it. You're welcome to read it. I will not read to you. Our district, as you clearly stated, there's laws and then there's district policies based on those laws. So our district has a policy. It was written in 2015. There were some comments by a former Board of Ed member that it was possible it was written at a time when kids were getting taxis and limousines to school. It was written in 1993. I was in middle school. I don't know who got a limo to school. In any event, this policy was last reviewed in 2019. The world was very different in 2019 in and around New York City. So our district's policy basically says everybody's not getting a ride from their house to school, and it kind of outlays that there will be a desire for children to take public transportation when it's available, but there's no statement about how old the kids have to be or anything like that when these decisions are made. In the former discussion, a former member did, and others, there was some statements made about the cost and the number of students, and I really just wanted to clarify that. The number is big. We have an excellent publicly available budget. It's way clearer than many other districts, and so everything anyone may want to read is right on the internet, right? So it's not like anyone's hiding anything. If anybody thinks there's some sort of mass exodus and a run on private schools, it's not borne out in fact, right? These numbers have been really stable. If you look back to like 2016, which was the earliest budget I could find, the cost to the district for transportation has been stable despite inflation, right? So it's not like there's a million kids all of a sudden trying to take a bus somewhere. It's just not borne out in the applications for transportation, at least, and anybody can read that. So, I think that's really actually a testament to our schools making it through the pandemic. So thank you to you all. In any event, the actual numbers, you can see how many students there are, and how much it costs. The number is big, but it includes transportation to athletics, special needs transportation, like occupational, educational transportation, et cetera. The number of students getting money to go to a bus is also in there, but it's a much smaller number than the total number. It's broken down by school, and you can easily compare how many kids are going to school on a bus versus on public transportation and what is being spent. You can look at the budget. Last year, from my reading, I'm not a budget reading expert, so forgive me if I read it incorrectly. There was a surplus. There was budgeted for more children than actually used the bus, and we budgeted for $451,000 and used $348,000. There's a wide variety in the amount per student. I'm not sure all of it, if maybe there's some typos, but you can also look at that and see the range per student is quite variable in where kids are going. So it's not so easy to figure out exactly how much it would cost for one kid. But I think that's something that should be kept in mind. There is, the budget that is laid out for 22 to 23 is greater than what was projected for 21 to 22. So it does seem like there was money in the approved budget for children to be able to be given transportation, and that's borne out even in the net projected expenditure and current budget. And so, nobody wants to bankrupt the district, right? Nobody wants to spend more on a bus than we spend on our teachers. Nobody is asking really for that. I think people just really want a safe way to get their kids to school. Parents can't just pay for this, right? You can't just sign up for it and write a check. The district has to help you. They won't take your money, BOCES. So that I want to make real clear. I think that it would be helpful if there was a way to do some cost sharing, particularly for people who have two parents who work outside of the home, or one-way versus two-way, really in the morning when it's really impossible to get two kids to two different schools, to have some help with that. And look, we gotta make rules that are safe to follow. And if you give a 10-year-old a Metro card and you're willing to walk them in the dark, in the winter, to a train station and put them on a New York City-bound train by themselves, that's one thing. But if you were hanging out and you saw a 10-year-old kid lost and crying, and you would think, where are these people's parents? And who would do this? Then we need to really think about the decisions that we're making, right? And make them together and make sure we keep all our kids safe. Just in the last few weeks, there were incidents at the Pelham train station in the middle of the day. There was incidents at the New Rochelle train station on a weekday in the middle of the afternoon. And the Supreme Court overturned our concealed carry laws, and fully grown adults are kind of worried about how safe they're going to be commuting to work. So I know you got a lot to do, but for some families, these are decisions that really need to be made soon, because these kids have to figure out how they're going to get to school. And if we think they're not going to be safe, then this is a really great time to try to find a safer way for them. Thank you again very much for your time and your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 14.1 is a motion to approve the amount to be raised by taxes for the 2022-2023 school year. And since I think this is $68,581,807, maybe we vote on it by itself. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? I think that I could consent a large number of these things through 14.2 through 14.50. So that's just before this change order, correct?
Yes, 14.51 was the change order.
Okay. Do I have a motion on those items, 14.2 through 14.50?
I guess my only question is there anything notable or uncommon or different in these motions that we should be aware of?
So if we just go to 14.2, obviously, you'll see a familiar name, the appointment of Keenan Bean for special counsel for tax certiorari's. And this is an arrangement we have with the town of Pelham for folks who are requesting relief on their tax assessments. And this is a shared expense we have with the town of Pelham. It's been an arrangement we've had for years. Certainly, we can have a discussion how you chose to handle that, if you wanted to handle this differently from the other RFP. But that again, this is an arrangement where obviously by sharing an attorney, we share that expense with the town of Pelham. The district chose to go alone. Again, there would just be a greater expense to that, or if chose to work with the town of Pelham on changing it, that would be a process and engagement in part with the town of Pelham. But they've been our tax certiorari attorney for a number of years. The other items that you see here are related much to our collective bargaining agreements. You'll see a lot of things related to third-party administrators, insurance companies, our annual bonding, disabilities insurances. Many of these items are looked at every year through consortium groups that we work with to make sure that we're receiving the best value for the district. We work with our insurance company, New York State Insurance Reciprocal. We work with other school districts because we're all unique in the services of our insurance. And this has really been beneficial to the school district. You'll see item 14.2. It's another acronym, LHRIC, L-H-R-I-C, for Lower Hudson Regional Information Center, and for BOCES, that has to do with our initial technology request for the upcoming school year. And then we have different agreements with other schools based on student need. So for a particular student, there may be a need for a student to go to a district outside the district. And in other instances, we may be able to provide a learning opportunity for a student from outside the district to Pelham, for which we receive a fee when it's available and economical for the district to do that. So those are those types of agreements. Again, many of them are just renewals from year to year. A newer one, which we did not have in past years, was item 14.5, was awardment of investigative services for residency investigations. That's just based on an RFP that was done in the fall. And knowing that there would be some transitions, we held off on that. And in the last few years, because of this, of where we've been with COVID, certainly there's been a little bit of a pause. But this is just the availability, if we ever needed to do a residency investigation, to have a professional investigator, licensed investigator, in this case someone with 20 years experience working with school districts, to be able to do that in a professional manner.
So I think we still have to take the motion, right? But if we take a big consent, we can always, like when we do the question and comments, we can always discuss.
Do I have a motion? 14.2 through 14.50.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Comments or questions? I guess you did mention the residency investigation,
Yes,
and sometimes that's a hot button.
it can be. We had another vendor who did something that we didn't like many years ago. That's not the vendor we're working with here.
So we're moving in a different direction.
We are.
Mhm. Any other comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Okay, 14.51 is the motion to approve change order for about
It's about
$85,000. And typically, we get more information from the contractor. So,
Yes.
so you were suggesting to wait on this?
I would. What this has to do with is a retaining wall by Lincoln and Third. It should not hold up, I'm told it should not hold up the work to be done on the field or the playground. But this is something where we're still waiting for information from our architect and from our construction manager. They review all change order proposals from the general contractor for site work. They look at it and validate it based on quantity, unit cost, and appropriateness of the change order. And we've not had time to receive all of that information. Knowing that the board was meeting now, we were really pushing to try to get this information. It's not available. We've not received anything from the architect. So at this time, and due to the scope of it, I think it's probably wise to take a moment and ask the board to hold on this item.
Any comments or questions about that?
No, I think that makes sense, and we've had that happen with this contractor as well, too, right? In the past, particularly on the Hutchinson project, so that, I think it absolutely makes sense to wait.
And would it hold up the project at all, or?
That was a question we asked them. We are told that it should not hold up the field, it should not hold up the playground, and it will not hold up the work to be completed on a portion with the cistern work and the other work that needs to get completed so that the field and the playground can go in. This is unrelated to those areas that need to get done right now.
Did you want to say something, Jackie? Okay, so we just won't vote on that. All right. Okay, so I think that I can do 14.52 through 14.55 as a consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Will? All in favor? Or any comments and questions on that? Do you want to say anything about these items?
So again, if I didn't hear we're going down to 14.64, is that correct?
Oh,
Or-
till 14.55.
I apologize.
Seems like a lot of after-school.
It is. We have 2 after-school programs at Hutchinson School, which has not this year, but they're hoping to have a morning program an hour before school, and they have a 3-hour after-school program. And then Playful Wonders runs an after-school program at Siwanoy School. So we have annual leases with them. This is the approval to execute those leases. The other ones are for our swim team. The girls' season happens in the fall, and we need to have a pool available. And we've got Sarah Lawrence College, so we have the agreement. And that's just, in August, actually, we'll have the boys' teams agreement for you. We got them both pretty close together. Again, we got that one today, so we don't want to put it up today. But again, part of our annual work and making sure we've got all those things in place to start the new school year.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Okay. 14.56 is a motion to direct employee number 523 to submit to a medical examination pursuant to section 913 of the New York State Education Law. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Okay. 14.57 is a motion to deny student transportation appeal 2022-2023, number 1. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor to deny the appeal?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I'm abstaining from this one.
I am
It'll-
too.
2 abstentions. And I think we may have an update on the transportation policy and our policy monitoring section, just, or we could have more discussion about that.
Discussion.
Mhm. I think I can take 14.58 through 14.64 as a consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Do you want to say a few words about this?
Happy to talk about each of these items. The first item is related to the nurse coordinator position. That was part of this year's budget, so that's a side letter agreement with our CSEA unit. The second one is related to closing out our fiscal year and budget transfers to make sure all of our accounts are in order for closeout of the year. We have a motion for the disposal of obsolete equipment. As you look at that, much of that has to do with desks and other items related to the former Hutchinson School. We've been storing that for the last year. Some of it's been redeployed, and this is what we're disposing of at this point in time, because we purchased all new furniture with the new Hutchinson School. With that, we will ask, we have an online auction company, and we will auction that equipment in a virtual manner on the website. The others is we do receive many donations. It's no secret, I've said it many times before, Pelham's a very generous community. We receive donations throughout the year from our PTAs for various programs of which they run. This is to provide authorization. The board gives authorization for us to receive those donations. What you may notice is sometimes when we have larger or more special donations, we still bring it before the board. We want to make sure it receives that special acknowledgement. So that from time to time, if you see those things coming up, that's why we'll have that. And then we have, again, extra classroom activity funds at the high school and middle schools, and this is allowing the authorization for us to receive those funds.
Any comments or questions about that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? And we do, of course, want to thank our PTAs for their
Absolutely.
donations.
Again, very, very generous school district, and our PTAs do really terrific work in supporting our students and supporting our schools.
Okay, 15 is policy monitoring and governance. And I guess we have readings of 2 policies. And we don't have Leah.
I'll jump in, but I didn't, if you want to, I'm looking to you as the next policy chair too. So.
Yeah.
But this policy 5684, we've spent a lot of time on with surveillance of cameras, correct? We can tag team this.
Mm-hmm.
This is the second reading, but it's one that's come back and forth, right?
Yeah. So the issue is surveillance cameras, and there's also some audio recording on certain buses.
Mm-hmm.
So audio recording is a separate legal issue of you have to have basically consent in a more formal way than just a camera recording. So we went back and forth quite a bit with the attorney to kind of hash this out.
Mm-hmm.
The other piece of it is notification will go out to anybody using the bus, and I think maybe in the student handbook or.
That's correct. And so at the beginning of every school year, and I think this was one of those items, if the board would wish to approve this one, that would probably help us as part of the annual mailing of information to parents.
If we waive
so
the
that-
third reading.
So that,
I see.
so that everyone's aware of the video surveillance, and we can include all of that information with the annual notifications.
Mhm. Yeah, so I get the policy on policies is that there's usually 3 readings, but there's an option to waive the 3rd reading and approve it. So you're saying that doing that in this circumstance would help with getting the
Yes.
mailings and all the notifications ready ahead of time?
Yes, if you waited till the 3rd, which would be at August, really all those notifications, that work is, could already be out from the schools.
I think the understanding was that we were looking at this with the kind of eye that we'd feel comfortable waiving the 3rd reading. There's a requirement of 2 readings, I think, for policies. The 3rd is at our discretion, so. This took a little extra time, I think, too, because we do have that BEP consortium that you mentioned. So we had to, we share buses with other districts, so we had to work in coordination with them as well.
Any comments or questions about this policy?
Can you go just a little bit more in details as to the actual recordings or the bus, since we do share these buses with other districts? Who will own the actual recording? Like, where would it be housed, or?
So the recording is on the bus. If there's an instance where a recording is requested, bus representative will go and download that recording from that bus. And then the process as it's been happening is that recording will go to our BOCES representative, which transportation coordinator, I ask for a physical memory, like a memory stick, and then we'll take that memory stick and I will share it with whichever administrator needs it and obviously ask them to secure it and maintain our chain of custody on it.
How long are the recordings kept generally?
Excuse me, board members, I really need you to pull your mics
Sorry.
from the table and speak into them, please.
Okay. How long are recordings kept generally?
So on the buses, I would say if there's an instance, we've gone back a couple of days and we've been able to, the vendor has been able to provide that recording. There's also been times when they have malfunctions and the recording just isn't working.
Yeah.
On our district site, I think we can hold up to 15 to 30 days, but it really depends on how many servers are running at that point in time for saving capacity, how many cameras we're operating, and that number's been growing district-wide a little bit. But the district cameras that you would see in the buildings here, those are not audio recorded. It's just on a bus where you would have a video and an audio recording. Front door you would have when people ring a doorbell. But other than that, if there's a camera in a hallway or the ones that outwardly face as you walk around the schools, those don't have an audio recording.
I would add just one piece. If we were to request a bus video for a student discipline or staff discipline matter, that then becomes a student record. So then the student record retention guidelines would then go into play. I don't know what those are off the top of my head, but that's likely more like a number of years. But that would be under the same security, confidentiality protocols and time frame as student records.
Thank you.
Yeah, the complicated piece is the audio recording and then the fact that we don't own the buses. So the surveillance cameras are like outside the schools are pretty straightforward, but it's the buses that we don't own, which also sometimes have audio. But we've heard from building leaders that that piece can be very helpful when there is an incident on the bus, so they can actually figure out what happened. And so I feel pretty confident. We talked about this quite a bit and went back and forth with council and BOCES, and yeah, so.
I think the committee worked on it for like 3 or 4 months, maybe longer.
Okay. Do we need a motion to waive the 3rd reading?
Yes.
Okay, so I would take a motion to waive the 3rd reading
So
for
moved.
this policy.
Second.
Okay,
Or I think maybe Ian got.
yeah. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? And then I would take
The
a
motion to approve.
to approve policy 5684, use of surveillance cameras in the district and on school buses. Do you have a
So
motion?
moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Okay, so we can talk about 15.2, policy 7553. This is a first reading of hazing of students.
Mhm. I remember that this is a policy that we had our building administrator spent a lot of time on, really considering the language and its use and what would be helpful to them, which was really useful, I think, in the discussion. So the definitions of hazing were talked about quite a bit.
There was also discussion of not just in athletics, but other types of extracurricular activities also, to make sure that it's not just limited to sports.
Right. And also trying to make sure that there's still the ability for some of those silly traditions, that take place particularly on, from class to class when it comes to dressing up, that we're careful not to overprescribe, to protect students, but not to overprescribe the parameters around those kind of behaviors.
And is this then going to be incorporated into the code of conduct? Or-
I think, so the process would be, this is the first reading, so then we would see it again at the next board meeting, and then either approve it then or have it come back for a third reading. And then it would, yeah, I think we already have an existing policy on hazing, correct?
Yes, this is just an update to that
So-
policy.
Yeah. So I guess what would be in the code of conduct would be kind of based on the existing policy, or?
I guess I'd have to go back and check.
I'm looking to pull it up as we talk.
Yeah.
People can keep talking if you want.
Yeah. There weren't really huge changes to this, as I recall.
I think it was the definition of hazing, making sure that it was more.
That's likely, and I think that it's a good example maybe of what you'll typically see, where you're not going to see the entire policy replicated in the code. You might see reference to it in a definition or a paragraph or a section, but then there's usually a cross-reference to the policy itself. So as Michael said, that kind of chain of command of how things come down connects the documents.
It's another example of how there's a lot of overlaps with policies. There's a lot of cross-referencing at the bottom of policies, like with DASA and Title IX and our Code of Conduct.
I think we also discussed the training piece of it,
Yeah.
to make sure and I think it says here, like the athletic director and leaders of different extracurricular activities, are aware of this policy.
I'm still scanning through the Code of Conduct to see if I can look for an example. There's a whole harassment, bullying, and discrimination section in the Code of Conduct.
That's okay. We don't need to.
Okay.
I don't need to have my curiosity satisfied now. I guess that I'm trying to navigate the kind of hierarchy and relationship between these different documents.
Yeah.
So I guess if there was any feedback or concerns about the policy, then we would discuss it in the policy committee to make edits and then come back at our next board meeting. But it sounds like this is pretty straightforward and people.
Yeah. I would just say if anything comes to your attention that you didn't notice before this meeting, to let us know so that we could discuss it with the team. We won't be meeting again till the fall. But, so if not, I guess if we didn't hear anything though, then we could do a second reading at the August meeting.
Yeah.
and a third reading in the fall.
So just to finish out our last policy meeting, we did discuss the out-of-district transportation policy and sought some guidance on what could possibly be allowed. I know one thing that was discussed was if parents could basically pay the district for BOCES transportation, and our understanding would be that would not be allowed
Correct.
under New York state law. We discussed possibly doing a mileage reimbursement, and what we heard from council was that would not be allowed under our current policy.
That's correct.
And so I think that's something that we can go back and look into any revisions of the policy. And I think there's been some discussion of age limits and maybe tweaks to say, to make sure it's appropriate for every student. Do you have any other thoughts on that?
No, that sounds right. I think the discussion at the last meeting, since we were already having a policy meeting, compelled us to look at this in light of some of the things that we heard, and if there was anything else that we could do to accommodate the families within the parameters of our current policy. But there's certainly no reason why we can't bring that policy back to the policy committee and look at it and with fresh eyes and with the perspectives that we heard.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions about policy committee? So,
You're doing great.
So, I actually,
Go ahead.
so when would be the next time we will look at the policy? Would be our next meeting, August 24th,
for which policy?
for the transportation policy?
Well, we had the policy committee meeting, and we didn't change anything at that time. We had some questions about what would be allowed. So that's sort of the feedback that we got. So the next step would be to have the next policy committee meeting, which probably wouldn't be until the start of the school year.
Yeah, sometime in September, because, we have to form all the committees in the first month.
Right, so any decisions made now are under the current policy.
Under the current policy, yeah. So then we would have the policy committee meeting, and if there were changes made, we would read the new policy in a meeting, get feedback, have a second reading, and possibly a third reading.
Correct.
Yeah.
And all with legal counsel weighing in on all the changes along the way.
Any other comments or questions about that? So, 16, we did 16.1. 16, I think I can take a consent agenda, 16.2 through 16.5, for different appointments to new instructional positions.
And also some annual appointments. There's one appointment that is retroactive to last school year because we had someone who applied too late but served in the position, so we want to make sure that they're covered. And we have many different appointments for the upcoming school year, but also we have civil service positions. Jim has obviously been working on, and I'm becoming more acclimated to that realm as well. And I just want to thank Jim for all the assistance and sort of understanding a little bit more about the process, and we're kind of in that transition stage. But working more collaboratively on those areas as well. But one thing I just want to note is that it was on the last agenda and also this agenda, and we talked a lot about interventionists, right, last year. And just so you're aware, and I always said that was kind of like some of the people who were interventionists that worked with us for that 1 year were getting some great training, and they're becoming more familiar with our programs, and they really, I think, some of them definitely showed a lot of professional growth. So last agenda and also this agenda, there are two individuals served as interventionists the past year. One was appointed as a probationary teacher at the elementary ranks, and one is now going to serve as a leave replacement. So just so you know that they have been really, I think, beneficial for us, but we've seen them now grow to become part of the faculty, which is, I think, just a testament to their professionalism, but also the assistance and the mentoring from those classroom teachers that work with them.
That's great. So we're going to have a motion for 16.2 through 16.5.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? 17, pupil personnel services. Take a motion to approve Schedule D, Committee on Special Education.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Any new business?
I just wanted to publicly congratulate you.
Oh.
I'm very grateful that you're in that seat and I get to sit on this side of this U-shaped set of tables. But I'm really excited for you and for Ian and your leadership, and excited to work with our new board members. As we've mentioned to each of you, Sue and I are here in our last year to help in any ways you see fit, and to help shepherd this new board. And so I just want to congratulate you, and great job on your first meeting.
Oh.
And I also want to say that I would love to take Leah's position of taking the motion to adjourn this year. It's been a silly thing that we've always had one board member do it. I don't know when that started, but so.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, and I really appreciate your support. And thank you again for your all's service. 19.1 is communications and comments from the public.
As you go to address the transportation policy, which I'm very grateful that you did take up, I guess my question is what the district's liability is if something bad happens to a kid using the Metro card that you give to them. So I do hope that you take the time to ask the attorneys that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I don't know, it was always Madam President. I don't know if I say Dr. President. What am I supposed to say? That was
I'll
part of
take
why I
it.
wanted
I'll
to
take
take
it.
the motion.
Sure.
Dr. President, would you entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Yes, absolutely. So I need a second?
Yeah.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? Great,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Congrats. Awesome.
thanks. Thank you.
One in the books.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Good job.